well, I've actually bought it sliced, but you can, get a whole loaf and slice it yourself. If you don't have this, you can use any firm bread. You could use sandwich bread, but it might be a little bit too light in texture and it might dissolve. I would use like a loaf of French bread or Italian bread or something like that. They're only $1, so it's not expensive at all. Now in this bowl, I have 6 eggs. I'm going to add some vanilla extract, some brown sugar. I'm going to get that started. This is going to bake over our French toast and kind of become like a custard. Then I'm going to add 1.5 cups of milk. Now I'm using 2%, but you can use, whatever kind of milk you have. You could even use almond milk or oat milk if you're, non-dairy with it. You could do that, would be fine too. Just get all of that whisked together. I am going to add just a pinch of salt. This is optional, but I think just a pinch. I think it just brings out the flavors. So in my casserole dish, I have 1 layer of the bread. Now I just bought 1 can. This is just apple pie filling. And you want to put about half this can over top of the bread. Just scatter it in there. However you can get it on there is fine. Make sure each piece of bread gets some apple on it. It can be a little harder to spread, but we'll get it. Just make sure. If I was at home, I'd just be using my hands to do this, but I won't here. All right, let's get 1 more apple to put on. Well, no, let's just put this one on there. I love these apple pie fillings. I think they're delicious. They also make a caramel one that would be delicious in this if you wanted to use that. Let's put 1 more piece there. Okay. Save the rest of that. Make sure your stuff is mixed. Now, top it with another layer. And what I like to do is go one direction on the first layer and the opposite direction with the next layer. At the end, when you're serving, this does make it a little bit easier to serve. All right. Let's put the rest of our pie filling over our apples. Over our bread. Making sure everybody gets a little bit of apple on there. You could substitute blueberry pie filling if you wanted. That's good too. Just whatever kind you like will work. Come on, you come out of there. You want to have your oven preheated to 350 degrees. If you wanted to make this ahead and let it sit overnight in the fridge, you totally could. Let's put one of those apples over here so that everybody's got a little bit of apple on there. Okay. Now, make sure your mixture is well mixed. Just whisk it. You could use a little hand mixer if you wanted to. And then what you're going to do is pour this evenly over top of your apples. Now, you could totally add some cinnamon to this if you wanted. That would be good. Or apple pie spice. Now, that bread is going to soak up the milk mixture. As it bakes, it's going to puff up there, and it's going to be delicious. It's going to form like a little custard. And that brown sugar is going to help to caramelize. It's going to be delicious. All right, we're going to pop this in the oven at, I believe this one is, nope, this one's 350. I've got two different temperatures. 350 degrees for 1 hour. So you don't need to cover it or anything. Just 350 degrees for an hour. And that's going to be delicious. And again, if you wanted to put some cinnamon on there, by all means, I would totally do that. Let me get rid of this, put it in the sink, and I'll save this for a snack here in just a little bit. Now, the next recipe is a breakfast tenderloin with a gravy. Now, I have here just a pork tenderloin, and I want to show you what you need to do anytime you are cooking. They come two to a pack. If you don't have these and you just have loin chops, that would work too. You know, the pork loin chops, that would be delicious. You do want to cut off any excess fat. This is a very lean cut, so there's not going to be much. And that's not edible. And I want to show you, you see this right here? It'll be on every single one of them. There will be a little small piece of tendon there. It's called the silver skin. You have to remove that. I like to use a very flexible boning knife, and you can get the tip. If you don't have one of those, you could use let me just show you. You could use a paring knife. My preference is the boning knife, but you could use a paring knife. You want to trim off all of that silver skin because that will not break down. It will stay tough. It's very chewy. I mean, it's edible, but it's not very pleasant to eat. And just any, pockets of fat that you see, you won't find a whole lot on tenderloin. It's the leanest cut in pork that there is. Okay, we're going to get some of that off of there. This is a great knife to have in your kitchen. It's just a staple knife for me. I have two sizes. I have a little one at home and a bigger one like this at home. Either one will work. But I do think if you're going to be doing any kind of cooking, this is an essential knife to have in your kitchen. Okay, we got to get that silver skin off there. That is not pleasant to chew on. Okay. We're going to cut this into slices. Now, again, this is an extremely lean cut. If you're using loin, pork loin, you will, of course, need to make or cook it a little bit longer and cut the pieces maybe a little smaller. So what I'm going to do, there's a couple of ways you could do this. You could cut it in half and then cut each piece in half and then flatten it with a mallet, or you could cut just some medallions like this. I'm just going to cut this up. When I come back, I'm going to show you how we're going to get this ready to go in our skillet. And we will brown them and we will be making the gravy. I'll be back in just a minute. Alrighty, now in a skillet on the stove, I have, excuse me, I'm melting just some shortening. If you don't have shortening, and by that I mean Crisco shortening, solid shortening. If you don't have that, you could use canola oil or vegetable oil. It would be fine. You don't have to have that. I just have it and want to use it. Let me go ahead and cut it up so it can melt a little bit quicker. I just want that to melt. Now, on my board, I have the tenderloins that I've cut into pieces, and I want to cover it with a sheet. I'm using parchment paper, but you could use wax paper, clear, shrink wrap, whatever you have will work. And I want to take a meat mallet, and I want to kind of flatten those out a little bit. I mean, you're not tenderizing this because, believe me, it is as tender as it can be. I'm just flattening it a little bit so that it's even, it'll cook even. Take your frustrations out on it. You see how that just sort of flattened it out and made it a little more the same size. That means it'll cook more evenly. Now, we do want to salt and pepper both sides, or just, I do one side, and then when I put the meat in the skillet, I'll do the other side. I'll put the seasoned side down. Pepper in my book is not optional. In your book it might be, but for me it's not. And I like the freshly ground. This is not pre-ground that you buy at the store. These are whole peppercorns that I grind in a spice grinder. I just don't like the pre-ground stuff. I think it has no flavor whatsoever. While we're waiting on that, we're going to mix some flour, just all-purpose flour, and I am going to mix a little bit of salt and pepper with that. Not much, just a little bit. And we're going to take our slices. Let's just get our station moved over here to our skillet. I'm just going to whisk this all together. And I'm going to test that to see if it's hot. The way to do that is to put, well, if I had a little small wooden spoon here, but I'll try it. See if it bubbles up around it. It's starting. It's not quite hot enough. You're going to take your pork tenderloin pieces, and we're going to lightly flour them. You can also put just a drop of flour down in your water, or your fat, to see if it bubbles up. I'm going to just lightly, you don't want a whole lot, just a little bit. We're lightly coating each one of these. And if you let it set just a minute with that flour on there, the flour will form a better crust. That's true for anything that you're frying. These are great little, if you didn't want to make the gravy for this, you could completely fry these and serve them as a biscuit. This was one of my daddy's favorite breakfast things, was a little bit, or a piece of pork tenderloin that's fried in a biscuit. It really is delicious. I mean, you think about it, you have ham biscuits for breakfast. It's really good. Now, let me get some tongs. And I'm going to lightly keep that flour. I'm going to put these in. I'm not cooking them through. All I want to do is brown them. Don't overcrowd your skillet. We're going to brown on both sides. And then once they're brown, we're going to transfer them into our baking dish, which is just a glass baking dish that I have. Couldn't be simpler. He needs a little bit more. And then we're going to make a gravy to go over top, and then we're going to pop it in a 400-degree oven. So we're just browning these is all we're doing. We're not going to do anything else. Browning them on both sides and then putting them in our skillet. I'm going to take a quick break. I'm just going to brown these up and put them in the skillet and not do anything else. And when I come back, we'll make the gravy, get that in the oven, and then we're going to make a delicious homemade buttery waffle. I'll be back in just a minute. Alrighty, now we browned our tenderloin on both sides and I put it in here. I did pour off some of the excess fat. I left, oh, I don't know, that's hot. I left, I don't know, maybe a third of a cup, fourth of a cup, and all the bits. Don't get rid of those bits. Take the flour that you have left over from where we breaded, whisk that in to the flour because we're making a roux, we're making a cream gravy. You want to leave those bits in there because that's flavor. Let me get this because it's a little bit hot. Oh. Okay, whisk all that in. Now this is where you don't want to walk away. You don't want to go answer the door or answer the phone unless you take this off the heat because this will go from beautifully golden to black in a minute. So don't walk away. I did turn my heat down to kind of a medium lowish heat. All right. I like to kind of let my roux get a little bit browned. You can take it as far as you want. All right. Now, in this cup, I have a cup and a half of milk and a cup and a half of water, and I'm going to slowly put in a little bit, start whisking, put in a little bit more, whisk. If you dump it all in there all at once, you're going to have a lumpy mess that you are going to have a difficult time getting unlumped. So I do it a little bit at a time, whisking completely in between. And once we get most of the lumps out, you do need a whisk. Then I go ahead and put the rest of my milk in there and whisk it all together. Let that come up to a little bit of a simmer and it'll thicken up in about 30 seconds maybe, once it gets hot. I mean, it really doesn't take it long at all. I like to just keep whisking. If you want your cream gravy to be a little browner, let your roux get a little browner. It's completely up to you. Just make sure that you don't walk away from it because it will burn. I've burned more than one thinking, oh, I can run in here and grab this before I finish and I'll come back and it'll be burned. So let that come up to a little bit of a simmer and it'll be nice and golden, and then what we're going to do is pour that over this, pop it in the oven. Now, because I'm using pork tenderloin, it's going to cook a lot quicker, so I'm going to bake it for maybe 30 minutes. But if you are using pork loin, not the tenderloin, but the center cut pork loin chops, which you totally can do, they probably needs to bake for 45 minutes to an hour to get tender. We're going to let this turn up my heat just a dot, let it thicken up, and that's how you make breakfast pork tenderloin with cream gravy, and we're going to serve it over biscuits, so you're getting biscuits and gravy in the best possible combination. All right, it's starting to thicken up. I'm just going to pour it over here and pop it in the oven. righty, welcome back. Now, let's make some homemade buttery waffles that are delicious. I have here my waffle maker that is preheating. In this bowl, I have just some all-purpose flour, some baking soda, some baking powder, and some salt. Just going to whisk all that together. And in this bowl, I have some butter that I have melted. I have 4 eggs. This is cooled, so I can put the eggs in there safely. 4 eggs, and then about a cup of milk. Get that out of my way. And I'm going to whisk that together using my mixer. You could do this by hand if you wanted to. Just a little quicker to do it this way. Get all of that incorporated. Then I'm going to add 1 cup of sour cream. Just to add a little tang, activate the baking powders. Got to have a little acidity to activate that. Get that mixed up. And then we're going to combine the wet with the dry. The reason I like to do this with a mixer is it gets it completely mixed before I add it to the flour, because you don't want to overmix it once you add it to the flour. Alrighty, now I'm going to add my wet ingredients to my dry. I'm going to do about half first. Just gently mix that. Now, anytime you're making pancakes or waffles, and by the way, you could use this for a pancake mix too, either waffles or pancakes, either one would work. You don't want to overmix it, because if you do, you activate the gluten in the flour, and you will end up with a tough pancake or waffle. It's okay to have a few little lumps. If you whisk it till it's perfectly smooth, you're going to have tough waffles and pancakes. This is one of those things you could completely make ahead, cool them, pop them in the freezer, and then when you want to have fresh waffles for breakfast, all you got to do is take them out, put them in your toaster, just like you would the frozen ones that you buy at the store. You see how we've still got some lumps in there? That's okay. Stop as soon as you have all of the flour incorporated. Now, my waffle maker is preheated. Let's make sure it's not all the way on high. I want it on about 3 for mine. Yours will vary with your brand. I am going to spray it. And I like to take like a half a cup measure and put some in each little well. Mine makes 4. It just depends on whatever kind of waffle maker you have. Put a little bit more up there. And then let that go until it's golden and cooked through. Now, let's come over here. We have our French toast that I just took out of the oven. We are going to put just some powdered sugar. I have just a little bit of powdered sugar that I'm going to put over top of this just to serve. Looks wonderful. And I would serve this with warm syrup or some fresh fruit. Now, here is our wonderful tenderloin bake. I have some biscuits here that I just baked. These are just canned biscuits. I'm going to treat this like you would biscuits and gravy, because that's kind of what it is. Instead of a sausage gravy, we're just going to have a chunk of pork tenderloin. Take your tenderloin, put it over top, and then get some of your gravy and place over top of that, and you have a fabulous, fabulous breakfast ready to go. Now we just got to wait on our waffle to finish. Mine has a little light right here that goes from red to green when it's ready to come out. Takes it just a couple of minutes. Don't rush it, don't hurry it, just let it do its thing. Have some fresh, delicious butter and some warm syrup if you like. Strawberries are great over waffles, blueberries. You could add some chocolate chips to this batter if you like chocolate chip waffles and chocolate chip pancakes. Whatever you want. This could be your base batter, and then you can expand it to whatever you like in your waffles. Alrighty, now we're just taking our waffles out of the waffle maker. I'm putting a little bit of butter on each one, or maybe a whole lot of butter. I like mine topped with a little bit of warmed up syrup. And there you go. I would serve, well, if you're serving the biscuits and the tenderloin, you don't need any other meat. But if I was just making the waffles, I would totally have that with some bacon. But there you go. You can even top that with a little bit of your powdered sugar if you want. Some people like powdered sugar over their waffles. It's totally up to you. So here is our finished dish. Here's our apple French toast bake. Then we've got our pork tenderloin steaks with the biscuits and cream gravy, and our homemade buttery waffles. They are delicious. Thank you for joining with me. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time on Everyday Manna.